We're recording.
I would warn you that you are now being recorded. You can say it.
And members also be aware that we're trialling tonight live streaming as a test via YouTube.
That means you all have to behave yourselves. Right, let us start our meeting proper. So we'll start with item 1, which is apologies for absence.
You have apologies for Councillor Williamson, Councillor Palfrey, Councillor Ewings and Councillor Smith.
Item 2 is declarations of interest. If any of you have got any declarations of interest to make now or during the meeting, please make us aware. Item 3 is the minutes of the council meetings. To confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Tavistock Town Council held on 12th of April. Is everybody happy with that and happy for me to sign? What is today? 10th, 05. 16, there we go. I don't believe there's any matters arising. So now we'll move on to item 4, which is the committees. If we do the Plans Committee and the Properties Committee first, and then if you don't mind, if we jump to item 5, we will deal with that before we come to finance and general purposes. So can I call upon Councillor Mrs Whitcomb to give us the Plans Committee meeting minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I present the committee meeting of 19th of April. 342, apologies for absence. 343, confirmation of minutes. 344, declarations of interest. 345, Dartmoor National Park. 346, town planning issues. 347, general correspondence. 348, planning decisions and applications, little a and then little b, and 349, the note of the 16th of May for the next meeting.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Rogers. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. If we go on to the Properties Committee, I call on Councillor Rogers, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I present the Properties Committee of Tuesday the 3rd of May. 350 apologies, 351 declarations of interest, 352 confirmation of minutes, 353 Whitchurch-Down Consultative Group, 354 items of information, little I General Manager's Report, 2 Works Department Report, 3 Penny Market Report, 4 Town Hall Report. 355 items requiring a decision. A cemetery. The draft cemetery rules and regulations Appendix 6 was, and the draft burial policy and monumental masons information Appendix 7. The following consideration of the draft documents was recommend that all the above documents be adopted.
We'd like to vote on that particular decision. Do we have a seconder for that? It's regarding. Oh, sorry. Seconded by Councillor Roberts. Is everybody in favour? All in favour? Thank you. The item B, letting of council premises, unfortunately we're going to have to defer that, and because the town clerk has obviously not had the chance to deal with that matter. So next we come to the Public Bodies Admissions Act, so we'll leave that till later. Right, now we come on to...
Just checking with everybody that they're happy to take item 5.
Now, is everybody happy to take item 5 at this point in time?
Mayor, a point of order. Under standing orders, this motion is not constitutional. Through section B of standing order 7, when a motion is moved pursuant of standing order 7A, above has been disposed, no similar motion may be moved within 6 months. This motion is similar. It is a direct correlation and a reversal of a motion, so it is then similar. The understanding of the word similar is subjective, but in a court of law this will be deemed as similar, and this should be removed.
On this matter regarding 7A and 7B, I have consulted with the Town Clerk in his absence. He has advised me that he has discussed the matter with both yourself and with Councillor Saunders, who is bringing this motion forward. He believes that it does or is a suitable motion, and that there isn't anything improper as per 9E. And I've been advised by the Town Clerk, if we take into account 9F, subject to standing orders 9E above, the decision of the proper officer as to whether or not to include the motion on the agenda shall be final. And the advice I've had from the Town Clerk is he considers this motion to be appropriate to be on the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I would like to adjust that slightly. The clerk didn't have a discussion with me, as I would have preferred. He was getting in his car to leave for an urgent appointment. And he said to me, it wasn't a discussion, he told me the motion was going to be put forward. Right? That is not a discussion. And if we proceed with this, then I will have to take the matter further, and you could end up with it being reversed.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on this. Because my understanding of this standing order is that if it's a similar motion, this is not tonight a similar motion, because it is a reversal. Now, on both motions, they couldn't come back for another 6 months. That's basically the position. This is not one where you can make a decision after a decision if there's one more decision for both parties in this, and that's what we've intended to take.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Before you make a ruling, can I just remind the members present what the Acting Town Clerk has told us, and that is that according to our standing orders, the decision of the proper officer is actually final. I dislike being threatened, which I think is what Councillor Rogers has just done. I'm not sure who he was threatening, whether it was me or you or the Town Clerk. I don't think that is appropriate behaviour for this chamber. If Councillor Rogers wishes to take it further at some point, so be it. That's his right and his privilege. But it is entirely improper for any member of this chamber to threaten the chamber or you as the chair of tonight's meeting in that manner, and I deplore that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, it wasn't a threat, it was a statement of intention.
Okay. Right, well, we have to obviously take into consideration what the Town Clerk has said, and we will go forward with that particular item. So this is something that has been discussed at quite a length over the last 2 meetings. I'm sure you'll all agree with that. So I think probably rather than sort of delay things too much, if everybody wants to speak once, that's fine. And then we have a vote. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes, sir.
You would obviously have a right to reply.
Yes, so the point of order, I have the right.
Yes, you do, because you've brought the motion. Yeah, yeah. Mine's on. Right, so who wants to speak first? Councillor Sanders.
Chairman, I think I need to formally propose the motion in order for there to be a motion on the table, for there to be debate. So what I would say is that this particular issue has been debated many times in this council, and it reached a point certainly before Christmas, it reached a point where the council was actually fed up with debating the thing in the council chamber, and it very sensibly, in my opinion, the council decided to create a working party to examine the various issues. The working party was comprised of people, I think they put themselves forward. Certainly no favouritism was shown in the selection of the working party. It was purely, as we do working parties, random. That working party had 3 meetings. At those meetings, a range of options were looked at. The option of giving the F&GP and the Properties Committee delegated powers to act on things, the option of not having either of those committees, or the option of having possibly one of the 2 committees but doing combined work. Various things were looked at. At the end of time, the working party came to the conclusion that the best way forward for the coming year would be to have the council without having the other 2 committees. The reasoning behind that was very simple. Firstly, those 2 committees have no delegated authority whatsoever. They can't even requisition a paperclip. So we have our staff preparing agendas, preparing documents, photocopying, collating, stapling and sending out to members pieces of paper which are there for discussion but can carry effectively no weight, because every one of the items on there comes back before full council. Every single one, any decision reached at either of those committees is not actually a binding decision until it's been through council, because neither of the committees have powers of delegation. And that's where the working party started, to see if we could deal with powers of delegation, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. The working party also considered the impact on our staff. They have to produce, as I say, those documents. They also have to turn around within much less than a week minutes of those 2 committees in order to get them in front of us for the full council meeting. In addition to that, our staff mostly start work at 8:30 in the morning. Every time we have an evening meeting, the staff who are here probably work from 8:30 in the morning, maybe through till 8:30, 9 or even 10 o'clock before now. We've had meetings going on too. And instead of doing it once a month with one council meeting, they're having to do it at least, or every 6 weeks, they're having to do it twice, because they have to stay for F&GP and finance, and they have to stay for full council. That is really an unfair and an unreasonable burden to place on a very small staff. If we had 20-odd staff and we could share things around, perhaps it wouldn't be so bad. But the fact that they're doing that is an unfair burden, added to which they're doing it for no real purpose, because no decision can be taken. We don't now get the press turning up at our F&GP and properties meetings very often, but we used to. And we often found things reported in the Tavistock Times, quite properly, by the press, that talked about things that had been decided by those committees, only to have them overturned at the following council meeting a week later. Confusion for the press, confusion for the public. Those of you who were here when we had the issue of dogs in the pannier market will remember only too well what a mess that created. And I don't mean the dogs in the pannier market, I mean the fact that there was confusion because of the various things. So the working party at the end of 3 meetings and three meetings of good solid deliberation felt that the best way forward was to go for a council meeting which was able to deal with all of the issues. That working party conclusion was put before the F&GP committee, where it was further debated, and the F&GP committee, having further debated it, supported the recommendation of the working party and passed that to full council. Full council debated the recommendations, and full council voted to go with the single meeting. Now, for reasons that I'm not privy to, it was decided by certain members to challenge that decision at a council meeting, and it so happened that on that particular occasion there were a number of proponents, supporters of the single meeting, myself included, who were unable to attend that night. Had they been present that evening, the vote wouldn't have been the way that it currently stands. The numbers will tell you that quite clearly. And in moving this motion, what I would like to do is 2 things. One, I would like to see that we pay attention to our staff and what we're asking and expecting them to do. And secondly, that was quite clearly, after many months of kicking it around in this chamber, 3 meetings of a working party, a meeting of F&GP and a meeting of council, I would strongly suggest to members that it was the will of this council that we give this system a try. It may not work. Change doesn't always improve things, but doing things the way you've always done them doesn't always prove the best method either. You can look at it in either way. But I firmly believe that the will of this council was that we should give this a try. I was extremely disappointed to see the challenge, because I think the people that put it forward, I don't believe they considered the impacts on the staff and the ineffectiveness of those committees. And it is for that reason that I have brought this motion tonight, because I would like to see the will of the council imposed, because the council took a decision quite properly. Now, the procedure that was used to bring last month's motion is in place largely to deal with things that have been done in a cavalier or rapid way, where perhaps thought hasn't been put into the decision. There is provision to do what the councillors did at the last meeting. This wasn't something that the council did on a whim. It wasn't something that the council did on a wing and a prayer. It wasn't somebody flipped a coin and said, whoa, let's go for it. This was a carefully thought through and carefully argued proposal. And it is for that reason, and the reason for the pressures on our staff, that I firmly believe that we should try this for a year. If it doesn't work, then so be it. There are ways we can deal with problems that crop up in year if needs be. We can have additional meetings, and I know there are people in the chamber who would like to go back to a monthly cycle rather than 6 weekly. Maybe we do need to make adjustments. But, you know, in my lifetime I've learned if you don't try something new, you're never ever going to know whether it actually might have worked better than what you've been doing. It may not. I'm not clairvoyant. But I honestly and truthfully believe that we should give it a try. And I think we owe that to ourselves, to our staff, and to the electors of this town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I believe Councillor Johnson would like to speak next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did not support the single committee concept when it was first raised. In fact, I thought that monthly meetings were preferable, but I'm not always right, as I'm frequently told. However, Tavistock Town Council spent a great deal of time and effort to reach a decision in December 15. As Councillor Sanders has said, there was a working group which met 3 times to examine the concept and come up with a proposal. So lots of time, and officers' time, and members' time and effort have been put into it. It's not just attending the meetings, it's reading the papers, it's giving it consideration and thought. What we need here in Tavistock is a fully engaged council with members fully engaged in the business of the town council. We made a decision in December, and now we need to try it. It was the original decision was that we would try it for a year and then review it, and I'm happy to support that, and I think that's how we should move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no intention of rehearsing the pros and cons of continuing or discontinuing the standing committees. But as a relative newcomer to the Council and someone who certainly does not yet have a working knowledge of the standing orders, I was very surprised when a motion was put before Council trying to reverse a motion that had been agreed after a considerable amount of work. I was also surprised that such a motion was passed at a time when there were so many councillors absent from the meeting. And there's no question that it might have been a different outcome had everybody been present. So there is a feeling in my mind that the outcome of some of these motions is almost a lottery, depending on which councillors are present in the room and which aren't. I didn't support reversing the original decision, and I don't support that today either. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Madam Mayor, like Councillor Ward, I'm rather new to all this here, and going back over paperwork on something that came out on the 21st of September, it states that all three approaches have their merits. However, option A is unlikely to be viable for a council with the amount of business of Tavistock Town Council over the longer term.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Gibbons.
It's worth pointing out, I think, that without the committees, we wouldn't have reached that stage in December. If we'd had to debate that issue in full council, we'd have been here all night. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Yes, I'll speak.
Councillor Sheldon.
Yeah, I'm taking a different view where it comes from, and one in practice with the committee system as we've got it at the moment. And that is, I think there's very few recommendations that come from properties. I can probably count them on one hand for quite a few months. I know that the councillors who signed that motion are all from that property committee. So I'm talking from the FGP, the Financial General and Purpose Committee. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of manipulation, but we've got another committee we haven't discussed, and that's the Forward Planning, Policy and Programme Committee. The difficulty with that, and I'll just go on about the FGP because the case is the same with the property, you've got 5 councillors who haven't got positions on this council and 5 councillors who come from that committee. That's on each, so there's 10 on each committee, 5 from FGP, Forward Planning, and 5 from Forward Planning, because that's the 2 chairs, the 2 vice chairs, the mayor and the deputy mayor. Now the problem is that when I'm at Financial and General Purpose, when the FPPP, is that Forward Planning Committee, have made a decision, say, a week before, and they're a subcommittee to Finance and General Purposes, they come to Finance and General Purposes, they come already with a majority. So any recommendation they make, they can just wave it through. So sometimes I'll say, well, it's not worth talking about this now. I'll go to full council and talk about it. And the way they can wave it through, because there's 5 representatives on the FGP, and of course 1 is the chair. So if there's a split 5-5, the chair can use their casting vote. So they can do that all the time. So those, I'm not saying they're doing it all the time, but there have been occasions when, particularly when they've had a meeting close to their recommendations, that they can just wave it through. Now that's not good enough, because when they get to council, then there's 6 on that committee, they only need another 3 councillors out of the 11 to carry on with the decision. So I'm saying, let's get our balance back. Let's get the councillors, we may have to draw lots, to go on the Forward Planning, Policy and Programme Committee. That is a status quo that we're talking about. That's democracy, because you can see the balance and there's no way people can get together and just wave things through. And they can wave things through, and I'm not saying they do, but they do on occasion, I believe, because, like I say, I've had to withdraw and take it to council. I hope you can understand that. I don't know if anybody's got any questions about it, but that's the problem I have. And I respect the working groups. Time was spent on that. I only went to one. And if we're going, as an example, to do this all the time on decisions, then where are we going to be? It's going to make a mockery of this council to say, well, I don't like that decision. And you get 5 people who may have voted against something, and then you've got the other 12 for. And then every time, we could just go around and say, oh, we'll go through this procedure, and we'll just go on and on and on. And we've also got a commercial arm, which is best suited in one meeting with all councillors involved. And I've heard the fact about, well, we got consideration from the week before what we just decided and recommended. Whatever you decided in one meeting should be what you've decided. If we're going to chop and change, then so be it, but it's a bit wishy-washy. So I'm asking you to support this, and we go to one meeting. They shouldn't be as long as they would have been because we had plans before. I even argued to go back to those committees when we had the one committees, because a couple of councillors wanted to stay as they are. And I said, well, this gives the chance for the new councillors to have a look at the system. And I hope you've seen it now. And I hope that you can see that we need to be strong together and we all need to know what's going on. So if we hold one meeting and make decisions, and we can have papers 3 weeks before the budget, doesn't have to come 3 days before. You can have these papers that are printed out 3 weeks before the meeting, and that will give you 3 weeks to consider whatever you do. And in fact, most of the finances, if you've got a question, you're basically asked to see the town clerk before the meeting to ask him, and sometimes we never get the questions that have been asked by other members. We never get it. So I think for openness and transparency, let's see where we are, get an independent forward policy planning and programme committee, and I think we'll do a lot better. Thank you.
Councillor Sheldon, anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did you understand that? Because there was a contradiction in terms, because properties had not put anything forward for goodness knows how long, but then they might have been rigging something. Anyway, this motion is ill thought out and it fails on a number of issues. And the proposal that Councillor Roberts mentioned on September the 21st was a recommendation from the clerk that it wouldn't work. So first of all, this motion and this policy has made no provision for the election of members to F and Triple P. They may say they're going to do it afterwards, but you want a motion that's got some substance to it so you can understand it and know where it's going. The standing orders have not been adjusted for this. Standing orders would have to be adjusted. There'd have to be a working party set up to adjust those standing orders. Those standing orders would then come back to the...
Sorry.
I'm rising for a point of order.
Councillor Sheldon, I did say everybody only speak once.
The councillor has said that about the standing orders have to be changed.
I'm sorry.
These standing committees are not mentioned in standing orders.
Okay.
There's nothing laid out for how long the task groups would work, what criteria they would work to. The minutes would probably have to be changed, the format that they're in, to recognise that it's different under a full council. I've been a councillor for nearly 3 years and I've gone on a number of courses. And when I go on courses, I speak to people to ask how their council works. And I was not that long ago in Coventry. And I asked the people there, how does your council work? And they all work differently. Some people elect a mayor for a term of 4 years, some people do it for 2 years, some do it for 1. I explained the situation that we have here, And they said, well, because you've got a business on the side, it's an extremely busy council. So you can't possibly have all of your meeting in one meeting. I also spoke to a very highly regarded former member of this council, Ted Sherrill, last week, and explained it to him. And he said, you must be crazy. He said, that won't work. Now, there's a man who was on this council for over 40 years. The other thing that you have to look at is, we're looking at 9 meetings a year. That's what we're trying to get rid of. But in those 9 meetings, you're able to debate. Last week, 3 things were deferred. One was to do with the Chamber of Commerce and their grant application. Now, I know that grant application has now been withdrawn, but under the new system, they have to wait 6 weeks. And if something is time sensitive, right, 6 weeks is too long. Also, before I come to a properties meeting, I have a meeting with the general manager, and every other meeting I have a meeting with the clerk as well. And the last meeting I had with him, I invited the deputy mayor to come along, and we was in his office for 3.5 hours going through the reports. So that when I came to the meeting, I didn't have 20 questions. But believe you me, if I don't have those meetings with him, when I come to these questions, there's going to be 20 questions, which will raise even more questions. So, as for the staff being here a long time, they certainly will be a long time. By the way, they still have to do the same amount of paperwork. It's not like someone stands at a photocopier anymore and pushes the paper through. They press a button on a computer and it punches it all out. The other thing you have to ask yourself is, where has this come from? Who's put this forward? Now, speaking to new members, they felt that they were rather bullied on that committee. And the people that put it forward, have they got another agenda? Well, as you've just heard tonight, Councillor Moody is going to be Deputy Mayor of West Devon Borough Council. Councillor Sanders is going to be the Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Sheldon's going to be the Mayor.
Councillor Rogers, I think, can you wrap up now, please?
Right. I believe that there's ulterior motives to this, and I've got a list of committees and other things that Councillor Sanders is on, and it's not about integrity, it's about capacity, about attending these meetings, and look how many members are short we are this week, how many were we short last time. It's about the capacity, because they are at other meetings and not at this meeting. I absolutely implore you to reject this and keep the current system.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. That's enough. Okay, Councillor Sanders, do you wish to have the last word?
I'm not sure if it's the last word, Madam Mayor, but certainly would be the last in the debate. Just to pick up some of the issues, I find Councillor Rogers' comment about the motion being ill thought out somewhat strange. The motion is very clear and very simple. Contrary to what I believe Councillor Rogers advised this meeting at the last time when I wasn't present, the clerk and the assistant to the town clerk actually had put a very considerable amount of time and effort into amending the standing orders as required where necessary, preparing a calendar of meetings for next time. Councillor Rogers, I believe, said that hadn't been done. Unlike Councillor Rogers, I take the time and trouble to check my facts.
So did I.
And they had done it, and if members in this chamber wish to have confirmation from Mrs Smallcombe of that fact, I'm sure she will be perfectly willing to give it.
Well, I got from the clerk that he hadn't done it.
Madam Mayor, am I to be allowed to continue this speech without interruption, or if not, are you going to ask Councillor Rogers to leave the chamber, please, because this is completely and absolutely outside of any form of procedure that I'm used to.
Councillor Rogers, please refrain. Allow Councillor Sanders to finish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion, it would be very strange if the motion contained some proposal for how people got elected to F and Triple P. Yes, there will have to be a decision made as to how that's achieved in the future if this motion is passed by this council. I don't see that's a particularly difficult thing to do, but clearly it will have to be done. And yes, it can be done. Standing orders need to be changed. I'm not quite sure what that was referring to, but as I say, any adjustment that needs to be made to any of the paperwork had actually been worked on by the clerk and by the assistant to the clerk, as had the calendar of meetings. That work was all thrown up in the air when this thing appeared out of left field. Nothing laid out about work groups? No, clearly not. If we need work groups, that will become evident during the course of the year. Work groups will be set up if and when they're required. Councils use task and finish groups. They're a very efficient way of dealing with matters. A very efficient way. You get a small group of committed people to work through the detail and to bring back proposals to the full council. Apparently, according to Councillor Rogers, our council minutes will need changing. I really have no idea why. I don't see anything wrong with the format of our minutes. The minutes record the decisions made at council. The minutes will continue to record the decisions made at council. You can't have all of your meetings in one meeting. Well, we do. We do now. F&GP properties have no authority whatsoever, no authority to make any decision of any sort. Everything has to come through full council. Everything. So you already have all of your meetings in one meeting. Nothing strange about that. There won't be any saving in paperwork. Well, probably I'm the only person in the room, by the sound of it, who gets the F&GP agenda papers and the properties agenda papers, and I then get another envelope. Somebody has to put it in the envelope. I don't think you can press a button on a computer and actually do all the collation and the sticking in the envelopes. Maybe you can, but I don't think we've got one in this town council at the moment. That has to go out for F&GP and properties, and then after that, the minutes of those two committees have got to go out before, and they've got less than a week to get them to us.
Councillor Sanders, can we begin to wind up, please?
Items deferred will have to wait 6 weeks. They have to wait 6 weeks now. The F&GP and properties can't make a decision. So if something gets deferred, it has to wait till the next full council. Nothing different. Where has it come from? Well, it came from the Working Party. I don't know which new members felt they were bullied on the Working Party, but not all of the members on the Working Party were new members. I think Councillor Rogers just managed to avoid questioning my integrity, but in terms of meetings, I would suggest if people, not specifically myself, but if people are having difficulties attending meetings, the less meetings we have, the more likely it is that we're going to get people actually turning up to the ones that we've got left. Because I think the problem is at the moment, there are members in this chamber who find it extremely difficult to try and get to all the meetings. The end result of that is most people only hear either properties or F&GP. They don't get both sides of the debate because they've got other things to do. So, Madam Mayor, I will wind up at that point. I am disappointed, very, very disappointed, that what should have been a professionally and a professional debate without bringing personalities into it and without personal attacks seems to have degenerated somewhat, and I find that extremely disappointing and very worrying for the future of this council. That is not the way we should be dealing with business in this council. It really is not. And I would ask that people support this motion and that we try it for a year. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The council's not going to come to a grinding halt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Sanders has put forward the motion. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Moody. Right, we go straight to the vote. All those in favour of the motion put forward?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The motion is carried. Right, now we come back to F and GP. Please, Councillor Johnson, would you like to give us the minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to present the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 3rd of May. 358 apologies for absence, 359 declarations of interest, 360 confirmation of minutes, 361 meeting of the Properties Committee held earlier that evening. 362 General Finance, little a, little b, little c, little d, little e. 363 items requiring a decision. A, calendar of meetings. There's a recommendation there which you may wish to take.
Yes, this is obviously now we've gone through item 5. We can now verify the calendar of meetings for 2016-17 on Appendix 4. It's recommended that consideration, it says it is recommended that consideration be deferred until the council meeting due to be held on the 10th of May. That's what it was there. So it's 10th of May today.
Assistant to the Town Clerk.
Right, the assistant to the town clerk wishes to say something.
Obviously, in view of the decision just made, I had done the other version of the calendar of meetings. I will send that out to you all tomorrow, so we'll have that ready for the annual meeting next week.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Little b,
can I just stop you there, please? That particular one is one that we were asked for more information. Again, unfortunately, we are unable to give you that information, so that will be deferred to the next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Little c, Councillor ICT. D, grant application.
Again, can I please stop you? We've got some more information on that particular request. Yes, please.
As members are aware via email, the applicant was asked to respond to a number of questions. The original indication to the assistant to the town clerk was that those questions were not going to be dealt with because they were requested by Friday at 12 o'clock. The applicant has now spoke to the assistant to town clerk on Monday afternoon and provided responses to the questions. And I presume it's down to this committee or council to decide whether they wish to consider those responses, which we have hard copies of now, which came after the actual date on the Friday at 12 p.m.
Have the councillors got any information on that?
Not yet.
Would you like...
the councillors
do you wish to look at this application at this moment? Yes? All in favour? No?
Well, I think we just haven't looked at it.
Okay. I'll just give you a few minutes just to browse through it. Are we ready to... Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Saunders?
I'd just like to clarify in my own mind, when we were presented with the application, my understanding is that they were requesting £400 from this council towards a total project cost of £2,200. At that time, they said they'd raised £800, which was comprised of £400 each from the Chamber and the bid, and that they were hoping on Councillor Sheldon's return from holiday to have £1,000 from the Tavistock Town team. I have a feeling that I've heard someone say that there isn't £1,000 in Tavistock Town team. My question really is quite simply, do we have any more concrete information upon which to base the decision whether to allocate money or not?
What you have in front of you is all that's been provided.
Councillor Sheldon?
Yes, as was mentioned, like I say, we've got £500. I don't know whether the town team would be inclined to give it that lump sum. That's all they've got out of £10,000 left. In view of the fact that we don't know what the outcome of Tavistock bid will be, and at least there's an organisation or something to in Tavistock. But don't let me talk about the bid too much. The problem I've got with this is the fact about advertising. I'm not totally certain. You know, if somebody's going to have a brochure and people are there standing in the town centre on that particular day, the man engine is only in the town for 1 hour. So
Two,
the
I
light.
believe. 2, I think.
2 hours. Yeah. Okay. Is it doing an hour down the road? I was on that bus, and they were, you know, when it came last week, and they said it's only here from 9 till 10, and then it's going up to the library. So perhaps that's part of it. I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line on that, it still doesn't explain. If you're going to do something like this, then I think you could knock up a little brief just saying, well, what it is. If it contains advertising, as we saw in the accounts, it raised another 4,000. Plus the 224 businesses, they've been advertised. Why can't they throw £5 in each if they are going to benefit from this? But really, the people are in the town, the shops are shops. To have a leaflet giving you 224 shops on it when you're actually in Bedford Square, if you want to go shopping, you'll see what people normally see, WH Smith and everything else. It doesn't seem very feasible to me. We've given £5,000 to this venture. I know it's the Chamber, but I'm a little unhappy because of the advertising revenue that could be got from this. It could actually be done. It could be done on advertising. We've seen publications. We've got a town guide, which is quite substantial, which is given by advertising. There is plenty of time here to either take £2 off each member and go round and get some advertising for this leaflet, rather than come to this council for this money. Thank you.
Whitcomb?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I went to a chamber meeting last night. Nothing was mentioned at all about this, which I find rather strange. They seem to think that this event will promote terrific, if they can work it right. But on their chamber members, it's made up of businesses, but it isn't made up of any retail, hardly any retail at all. So why they are interested in the town when most of their members are outside the town, I do find it rather strange that he's written this statement. Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments to make? Councillor Saunders.
Madam Mayor, in order to move proceedings forward, somebody has to say something, and I don't think Councillor Sheldon made a formal proposal that we didn't support it, so I will formally propose that we do not support it at this time.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Right.
Do that so we can move the debate on. Then.
We've got a proposal, we've got a seconder, Councillor Sheldon. Did you want to say something? No, that's fine. So we put that to the vote. All those... Okay, fine.
Make a statement on this.
Yes, of course.
Madam Mayor, I concur. My problem is that there are lots of issues. There are still lots of unknowns. Even though we've got more information, there are still lots of unknowns. We don't really know, is it going to be an advertising brochure, is it not, is it how it's all going to work. And really, based on that, I just cannot support it at this moment. If I had more information, understood what was really being proposed, I could support it.
Thank you. Right, now shall we put that to the vote? We have a motion, we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour of rejecting this application? Thank you. Anybody against? No? Fine. Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Little E, Town Hall charging arrangements. There's recommendation there. I don't know if there's any update.
I don't believe there is at the moment, is there?
The rules and regs have been passed on to our legal team.
Thank you. 364 items for information.
Can I just stop you on item A, just to say don't forget to let assistant to the town clerk have your preference as to what style of folder you want or diary you want for this next year's meetings by Friday the 13th of May. All right.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, my apologies to Councillor Johnson. It was just the way she said 364 items for information that caused me merriment. It wasn't anything else.
Right, if you'd like to continue.
Thank you. Little A, B, C, D, E, 365. Sorry, I beg to move.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, now we need to go back to properties. We've now, yes, sorry. Right, we're moving into part 2 now, so if we go back to the properties, just switch this off a minute.
Excuse me, are we not doing items 6 and 7 on the agenda?
Sorry, I do apologise. Item 6, communications or reports. I would just like to say that I would like to say thank you to everybody who came to my final party the other day and for the wonderful gifts that I was given. I know that everybody on this council works extremely hard. All the councillors, the staff have been absolutely excellent, and so thank you very, very much for that lovely evening. Urgent matters brought forward, I've got none. Now we go into part 2. Have you stopped it? Just one moment, please. We've got to stop the machine.